Henry VIII, the king who would reshape England, entered the world on June 28, 1491. His birth marked the beginning of a life that would be filled with both grandeur and turmoil, a life that would leave an indelible mark on the history of England. His birthplace was Greenwich Palace, a place steeped in royal history. This grand palace, with its opulent halls and rich tapestries, was a fitting birthplace for a future king. It was here that Henry would take his first breaths, surrounded by the echoes of his ancestors and the weight of his future responsibilities. Henry was the third of 4 children born to King Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. His siblings included his elder brother Arthur, his younger sister Margaret, and his youngest sister Mary. Each of these children would play a significant role in the unfolding drama of the Tudor dynasty. From birth, his place in the Tudor dynasty was significant, yet uncertain. As the second son, he was not the primary heir, but his existence provided a crucial backup for the Tudor line. His early years were marked by the duality of being both important and secondary. His father, Henry VII, was a ruler who had fought hard for his crown. Henry VII's reign began after his victory at the Battle of Bosworth Field, which ended the Wars of the Roses. This brutal dynastic conflict had torn England apart for decades, and Henry VII's victory brought a much-needed sense of stability to the realm. He ended the Wars of the Roses, a brutal dynastic conflict that had plagued England for decades. This victory was not just a personal triumph for Henry VII, but a turning point for the entire nation. It marked the end of a period of intense strife and the beginning of a new era under the Tudor banner. Henry VII's own claim to the throne was tenuous, making the birth of a healthy son essential to secure the Tudor lineage. The birth of his sons was a beacon of hope, a promise that the hard-won peace would endure. For Henry VII, the survival and prosperity of his children were paramount. However, Henry VIII was not the primary heir. That honor fell to his elder brother, Arthur. Arthur was groomed from birth to be the next king, receiving the best education and training that the kingdom could offer. Arthur's birth, 2 years before Henry's, was met with great celebration. The kingdom rejoiced at the arrival of the future king, and Arthur was seen as the embodiment of the Tudor dynasty's hopes and dreams. Not only was Arthur seen as hope for the country, but a symbol of dynastic stability that Henry VII craved. The celebrations were grand, with feasts, tournaments, and pageantry that reflected the high expectations placed upon the young prince. His arrival secured the Tudor line and promised an era of peace and prosperity for England. Arthur's presence was a reassurance to the kingdom that the future was bright and secure. The Tudor family, with Arthur at its center, was seen as the harbinger of a new golden age. The people of England looked to the future with optimism, believing that the worst of their troubles were behind them. As the second son, Henry's role was less defined. He was a spare, important, but not destined for the throne. His early life was one of relative freedom compared to his elder brother, allowing him to explore his interests and develop his own identity. The lessened restrictions upon a young Prince Henry, with a much lower status than Arthur, gave him a unique perspective on his place in the world. While he was not the primary focus of his father's ambitions, he was still a vital part of the Tudor legacy. Despite the difference in their positions, the two brothers were said to be close. They shared a nursery and were often seen playing together in the gardens of Greenwich Palace. Their bond was one of mutual affection and camaraderie, a rare and precious connection in the often harsh world of royal politics. These early years were filled with moments of joy and innocence, as the brothers explored their surroundings and forged a bond that would shape their futures. Their early bond hinted at a harmonious relationship, though history would tell a different tale. As they grew older, the pressures and expectations of their respective roles would create a rift between them. The close companionship of their childhood would give way to the harsh realities of their destinies. This dynamic of heir and spare, of expectation and uncertainty, would profoundly shape Henry's early life. It instilled in him a keen awareness of his place in the world, both privileged and precarious. He learned early on that his fate was tied to the fortunes of his family and the whims of destiny. This awareness would stay with him throughout his life, influencing his decisions and shaping his character. The young Henry grew up with a deep understanding of the fragility of power and the ever-present threat of change. It was a world where fate could change with a single breath, where the line between power and obscurity was razor-thin. This understanding of the volatile nature of power would become a central theme in Henry's life, driving him to secure his position and leave a lasting legacy. Arthur, Prince of Wales, was everything a future king should be. He was intelligent, handsome, and possessed a natural charm that endeared him to all who met him. From a young age, Arthur was groomed for kingship. His education was meticulous, encompassing history, languages, and the arts of diplomacy and warfare. Arthur's upbringing was steeped in statecraft. He attended his father's council meetings, observing the intricacies of governance. He corresponded with foreign dignitaries, learning the delicate dance of international relations. His marriage, too, was a matter of strategic importance. At the tender age of 2, Arthur was betrothed to Catherine of Aragon, the daughter of the powerful Spanish monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella. This union was a major coup for Henry VII, securing England a powerful ally and bolstering Tudor legitimacy on the European stage. Arthur's world, then, was one of immense responsibility and expectation. He bore the weight of his dynasty's future on his young shoulders. He was the embodiment of his father's ambition, the vessel of England's hopes for a glorious future. In the spring of 1502, tragedy struck the Tudor dynasty, altering the course of history forever. Arthur, Prince of Wales, the eldest son of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, fell ill and died at Ludlow Castle on the Welsh border. The cause of death was likely sweating sickness, a mysterious and virulent disease that ravaged England at the time, claiming many lives and leaving families in despair. Arthur was just 15 years old, a young prince with the weight of a kingdom's future on his shoulders. The death of Arthur, the heir apparent, sent shockwaves through the royal court, shaking the very foundations of the Tudor dynasty. Henry VII, who had fought so hard to secure his dynasty through battle and diplomacy, was devastated by the loss of his beloved son and heir. Elizabeth of York, Arthur's mother, was inconsolable, her heart shattered by the untimely death of her firstborn. Their grief was palpable, a stark reminder of the fragility of life, even for those born into privilege and power. For young Henry, Arthur's death was a life-altering event, one that would shape his future and the future of England. In an instant, he was thrust from the sidelines of power into the spotlight, his life forever changed by the sudden shift in his family's fortunes. No longer the spare, he was now the heir apparent, the future king of England, a role he had never expected to play. The weight of this sudden shift in fortune was immense, a burden that would shape his character and his reign. At 10 years old, Henry found himself facing a destiny he had never anticipated, a future filled with both promise and peril. The carefree days of his childhood were over, replaced by the heavy responsibilities of kingship and the expectations of a nation. He was now the focus of his father's ambition, the vessel of a nation's hopes and dreams, a young prince destined to become one of England's most famous and controversial kings. As Henry grew, he would come to embrace his role, navigating the treacherous waters of politics, religion, and war, leaving an indelible mark on history. The Tudor dynasty, though shaken by Arthur's death, would prove resilient, with young Henry at its helm, steering England through one of its most transformative periods. Henry VIII's legacy would be a complex tapestry of triumphs and tribulations, a testament to the enduring spirit of the Tudor lineage. Henry VII, now facing the mortality of his line, clung fiercely to his surviving son, Henry. He showered Henry with both affection and expectation, knowing that the future of the Tudor dynasty rested on his young shoulders. The king saw in Henry not just a son, but the guarantor of his legacy, the one who would carry forward the Tudor name and secure its place in history. He was determined to mold his son into a strong and capable ruler, one who could navigate an extremely challenging and dangerous world of politics and governance. Elizabeth of York, still grieving the loss of Arthur, their firstborn and the original heir to the throne, doted on her surviving son Henry, with a tenderness that sought to fill the void left by Arthur's death. She instilled in him a love of learning and a deep sense of piety, believing that a well-rounded education was essential for a future king. Elizabeth, a woman of considerable intelligence and political acumen, understood the importance of a balanced upbringing. She also played a role in shaping Henry's understanding of statecraft, discussing politics and governance with him, even at a young age. Henry's childhood, once carefree, became increasingly structured. His education was intensified, encompassing languages, history, theology, and the arts of war. he was taught to appreciate the complexities of leadership and the responsibilities that came with it. He trained with the royal swordmaster, honing his martial skills, learning the art of combat, and understanding the importance of physical prowess in a king. His days were a whirlwind of lessons, physical training, and courtly duties, leaving little time for the carefree play of his earlier years. While Henry VII was a distant figure, preoccupied with consolidating his power and filling the royal coffers, ensuring the financial stability of the kingdom, Elizabeth of York provided warmth and affection, balancing the stern expectations of his father with her nurturing presence. She fostered in Henry a love of music and literature, introducing him to the cultural riches of their time, passions he would carry throughout his life, influencing his reign and the cultural landscape of England. However, her influence was tragically cut short when she died in 1503, a loss that left a profound impact on young Henry, leaving Henry orphaned of his mother's love at the tender age of 11, a void that would shape his character and future reign. The early loss of his mother, combined with the high expectations of his father, created a complex emotional landscape for Henry, one that would influence his decisions and relationships throughout his life. As he grew older and eventually took the throne, the lessons and influences of his parents remained with him, guiding his actions and shaping the course of English history. The court of Henry VIII would become a place of great cultural and political activity, reflecting the diverse interests and rigorous training of his youth. His reign would be marked by both his father's stern pragmatism and his mother's cultured influence, a blend that made him one of the most memorable monarchs in English history. The legacy of Henry VII and Elizabeth of York lived on through Henry VIII, a testament to the powerful impact of parental influence on a young prince.